everyone. Welcome to Sunday Night Dead. Matthew Slozer from Automoon Paranormal with my special guest and the host, which I co-host with on Tuesdays for Astrology and Alchemy, Paranormal Sarah. How are you doing?
You're looking at it. We're having storms and stuff here, and cars breaking down, storms happening. It's just the life, but it's exciting because tomorrow's Monday. It's a whole new month tomorrow. I can't believe it.
Yeah, the year's going by so fast. Which, if you haven't checked out our prediction show at the beginning of the year, we were pretty darn good.
Not to toot our own horns, but even some of our predictions for this last week, I have it over there on my board. I was like, it used to be right there, but it's over there now. Freaky, kind of freaky, really freaky, maybe even, which is cool. Okay. It's nice to be accurate, but yeah. As you know, if people join us for that prediction show and we did it, some of those things we even said we really don't want this to come true.
No.
We're just saying it because this is what we hear, so it's kind of wild. But anyway, it's exciting to see people in the chat room, and I'm excited to join you tonight. So I have no idea what we're talking about tonight. I wanted to do what you do for Astrology and Alchemy and be completely improv, unprepared, and be like, what could I bring if I didn't prepare at all? So hopefully...
This is interesting. So I hope we have some of the folks hop on from our other shows when I teased this a couple months ago. But I didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare because I was in your state last week. Had a very nice trip. First time in about 5 years that I was up in Minnesota. So I have mentioned before there are one in particular, but two crime cases in the area where I grew up. That one actually has made some, I don't think it's very well known though, but it has made some of these podcasts and stuff because it is a very interesting story. So I was going to share these two stories that kind of turned into urban legends or, kind of whisper down the alley. Things have, changed, at least when I was in high school, what we heard about them. And then since with your background, I thought it would be very interesting to hear your thoughts, because at least one is I thought they were both unsolved. One's a little, so the one I don't have nearly as much info as the other, so we're going to spend a lot more time on one than the other. The one that we're going to spend the most time on is not solved to this day. They've had some suspects. I'll get into that a little bit later. So it still makes the local news every once in a while, even though this happened in 1979. So we're going pretty far back for a cold case.
Okay.
And this was in Bethlehem. And so I'm going to share, and hello, everybody in the chat. I'm going to share what I knew was the story. And then I don't know if I did post this on my home page. So I have a lot of friends that are from the same town. So I don't know if they're going to know this or not, or anyone is familiar with the story, please weigh in. But the story was that there was a girl, high school girl, and just think of horror movies, because this is kind of like horror movie sounding. This is how I heard it. Then I'll tell you what the real story was. She was on the phone in her room and heard, "Oh, I hear somebody outside," or I hear someone. I'll call you back, and hung up. And then they found her the next day murdered in the house.
Mm.
And so we would drive by this house every once in a while because it would just be creepy. And this was not, this was 79, and I was in high school in the mid to late 80s. So it wasn't, that old then. So this would be like this house that you drove by, and there's actually pictures of this. I'll give you details, and you can actually see that I when I was doing research on this, the photos of the house are online, so you can see it's kind of a unique house. It's kind of set back in this weird. It was a neighborhood where there were lots of executives and things. It's a at the time it was a wealthier neighborhood, but just kind of it's laid out weird. So you drive by and go, "Oh wow, she was probably up in that room, and the killer was outside the window and snuck in the house." Well, that's not the story.
Okay.
What the story really went, and this gets very, very interesting. There's some weird sidebars on this.
I immediately get a sense of her dad or something, but okay.
It was a family of four.
Okay.
I'll go over a couple of the theories then. It's a family of four. The mother died of leukemia in 1976.
So 2 years before this happened.
Yeah, this would have been March of '79. It was her senior year, so she was all set up. She was going to go to Penn State. Was pretty active in a lot of things. Her father was he was an executive at a cement company, and he was on, which I'm going to say, this neighborhood, this plays in later to this. This neighborhood was fairly, from what I've read, lots of executives. So there's lots of transit, people, transferring, moving. So there's it's not one of these neighborhoods where necessarily people would move in and live for, 30, 40 years, because it was a lot of professionals that, kind of with different companies moving on and things that could play into at least one of the theories coming forward. All right. So she was home and she was going to go out with her friends for pizza that night. And she was upstairs on the phone. And at 4:30, while she was on the phone with one of her friends, the doorbell rings. She does not hang up. She says, "I'll be right back." Sets the phone down, goes downstairs. Landline. Yeah, landline. Yeah, this is late 70s. Comes back up, gets back on the phone, not stressed, not anything, saying, "I'm just going to have to call you back." Hangs up the phone. At 4:45, she calls her dad's work to see if he left already, because he was going for the weekend to Atlantic City for a conference or some kind of meeting, saying, "Did he leave already?" The secretary said, "Yes, he's already gone." Hung up. End of that conversation. Friends come by because they're going to go out for pizza around 6:00 that night. Knock on the front door, no answer. Went around to the back, knocked on the back door, no answer. Called, no answer at the house. Couldn't reach her at the house. It called off and on during the night. Her brother, who went to one of my alma maters, Lehigh University, was staying with a friend, so he wasn't there that night. But he called her several times. Tried to call the house, couldn't get anybody. So the next morning, when he still couldn't reach her, he goes to the house, opens the door, and there she is in the kitchen in a pool of blood, with a 10-inch kitchen knife broken off in her back.
Oh my God, broken off.
18 stab wounds, 15 of which would have been fatal. Wow. Now, a couple of things they throw into this is they feel she likely knew the attacker because of letting the person in and not, kind of how things went. The other piece is they said by the nature of the scene, that it looked like it was a kind of a crime of passion. So, not premeditated, kind of anger. There's some thoughts of, or at least theories of, did she actually pull the knife to defend herself and the person got it away from her? And then, but I mean, this is all speculation. This is the only things that are known. Now this gets weirder. The son
who was staying at someone else's house.
Yes. The son and his dad cautioned him against doing this. Do not do this, do not do this, do not do this. Decided he was going to try to flush out the killer by very publicly saying all around, he knows who did it, he knows who did it, he knows who did it. He's going to out the person. Him and a coworker worked at a gas station in Bethlehem where they were cleaning up with gasoline. Odd thing number one. 2 months after this murder, or it may have been a couple more months after the murder, the gas station explodes and he dies. The other person lives, he dies. So months after the murder, the son now is killed. But what I didn't realize until I was just doing research was he was all along saying, "I know the killer, I know the killer, I know the killer, I know the killer," and then he dies into these weird.
Which is a good motivation for someone to.
So I'm going to pause. I will now start checking. Hello to everybody in the chat. I wanted to get the full story out on this one. And then I figured we could spend some time. This is the longer of the two. So this is the one that I would like to spend. It's got the less of the other one, which I'll just tease, has a little urban legend thing to it. That would be like a scary place you would go to check out. But when I actually did research, there's not nearly as much online on it, and it's really confusing what is. So there isn't as much to discuss on that one, but I will bring that one up. That one is, if anyone's on, that is from, I don't see any hometown folks in chat. So I don't know if anybody's on here. If anyone is familiar with in the whole Lehigh Valley area, Becky's Grave, that is the other one that we will talk about. And I will make sure we get to that. But comments in the chat room on this one. And I just want to kind of get your initial thoughts on this.
Man. Well, like, I've not heard of this. I'm not.
Oh, I want to say, really quick, Holly Brannigan. If anybody wants to start looking stuff up online,
Okay,
that is
so her name is
the
Holly Brannigan, and so this is late 70s. There's so many things that kind of come to mind in this, and so I've worked in forensics now for more than 20 years, and it's, every offender is a little bit different. There's a lot of things to say about particular things in this, like the knife. Usually to stab somebody, especially that many times, that's usually very passionate. That's usually somebody that you know. That's usually, you said it was sticking out of her back?
The description I have is sticking out of her back and broken off.
So that's a lot of physical force.
When they said it was 15 fatal stab wounds, I don't know if this is correct or not, but what I read when I was researching it said that the 15 stab wounds were in the back as well, and there was 3 defensive wounds.
So, defensive wounds. That's kind of interesting. So not to say that, a woman could do that, but it's also, there's a lot of blood involved in a stabbing like that. 15 stab wounds, all 15, a lot of which are fatal. That's going to be creating a lot of blood in the area. Surely a footprint, surely something was gathered. Otherwise, that's pretty quick and planned, and you know exactly what you're doing, and you go up and and in which case from the back, it would make me feel like maybe somebody who didn't want to do it, because, staring in the eyes of the people you love as they pass away, it's very traumatic. And so the dad was, and the mom was...
The mom died like 3 years earlier.
The mom had died of cancer.
Leukemia.
So let's not be, when I think of forensic psych, I immediately think of the gender associations with Munchausen by proxy. Usually that's a female type thing because it's associated with the want of attention, but the masculinity, can also want that to the firefighters and, going out and helping people and maybe exaggerating the concern more than it needs to be to make them look like the hero, and nurses, for the feminine, the nurturing roles. It almost makes you wonder if the dad didn't have a little bit of that going on maybe, and his wife died, his daughter died, his son died. That's kind of weird. Or was he having some PTSD flashback of his wife, and was he still, 3 years is not really grieving in such a way that you'd go downstairs and stab your daughter, but maybe you're on a medication, maybe you're on an SSRI or something that gives you some very small percentage that get really crazy thoughts. It's like, I would want to know the condition of the dad.
Okay.
I'd want to know more about, the dad was on a trip. Was he on a trip? Did they verify he was on the trip? Did he really go on the trip?
Yeah, it's interesting that I will say that but you bring up a really interesting point. Even when you read all the things, there's all this and I'm not throwing things towards him. There's a lot of empathy for him. So I never hear anything about them checking out his alibi. I'll get into some of the theories then going on, but I will add 2 things really quick. One, the other piece on this is they totally botched the crime scene. So I guess
of course they did.
There's actually photos of the detectives. They're not wearing gloves. The scene got contaminated. Then on top of it, they didn't preserve the clothes well, so the clothes have all degraded, so they can't even do DNA testing on the clothing. Which again, this will feed very nicely with a couple of the theories out there. The other piece is, I've seen it speculated that they feel that the killer stayed in the house a long time. So there is a lot of speculation that it was someone in the neighborhood, that there was nobody saw any odd. This would also sync with what you were hinting at too, though. Nobody noticed anything odd. They said that possibly the person hung out, cleaned some of the things up, stayed there until it was dark. This would have been spring, so like if this did happen right around 5 o'clock, it still would have been light out. Wait till it got darker and then just left and walked back to wherever they were from.
He was a lawyer?
He was an executive at a cement company.
Oh, that's right.
Which cement was a
man, what a good way to hide the body.
Crazy, we had Bethlehem Steel, which was big. We have a lot of a little bit to the north of the city. We have a lot of there was a lot of cement industry, so that was actually a big industry up there. So,
man, intuitively, I almost want to do a pivot on that, and some of the questions in the chat too were great. Did they say if she was sexually assaulted at all, or if there was any previous?
No sexual assault.
Okay, so that's good. Because then I start getting a sense that, man, maybe Dad had a girlfriend. Maybe Dad had a girl, but then I kind of go back to this was going to be her first year going to college.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like that empty nest syndrome. This is Dad having empty nest syndrome with the last child because the brother's older, slightly older, staying over at a college party. He's already left. Mom died.
Mm-hmm.
So either this is like a really jealous girlfriend where first year away from Dad after Mom's dead and there's kind of some separation struggles and the girlfriend's like, I'm going to sever this literally, physically, right now because I've had it. Or I would say it's the dad. How sad that they botched the crime scene, because that's kind of how I was familiarized with the Villisca X murder house before it was a paranormal hotspot. Was like of all the crimes that you would know who did it if they didn't have people walking through the house and not securing any of the location or evidence or just goodness gracious, man, no chain of command at all. And that is really frustrating. Because is that a small, big, what kind of a size town was that, would you say?
Bethlehem's decent size. So it's part of Allentown so we kind of have like 3 cities, Allentown, Bethlehem, Easton. They're all pretty close together. And when you add that whole, I don't know how big it would have been at the time, but when you add the whole metro era up at the time, maybe, 200,000, 300,000 total, like in the not that city, but I'm saying like the whole metro area. It's a big built up spot, and it was still pretty big. Even going back 40 years ago, it's the 4th largest in Pennsylvania. So,
well, the fact that there's no forced entry or anything like that is what kind of I would say, man, it was a random crime and she was the only person home. But the fact that she came back to the phone, hey, I'm gonna have to call you back. Like it was almost like, hey, sweetheart, I'm just stepping in real quick. I forgot something. I'm off to my thing and I need to get something. And then Dad had the office manager doing the alibi of like, I don't know. What do we think? Maybe she was in a breakup. I see someone wanting to go with her, but she didn't want to talk. Isn't that interesting? I do get a sense that it was a man. Whereas I would like to think that it was a female girlfriend coming in and being like, hey, your dad just left. He wanted me to come pick something up. Is anyone here with you? It's like, no, here, I was on the phone. Let me go, tell my phone to chill out. And like, yeah, let me call you back. And then like after the girlfriend leaves, calling the office to be like, Dad, so-and-so was here looking for your shit. She's weird and I don't fucking like her. Like it could have been something like that.
Yeah.
Where it was a girlfriend involved. Not to be, because this is where I'm going to be very stereotypical. And this is where, in my day, Matt, in forensic psychology, profiling is a dirty word now because we're in a realm of discrimination. You have to be very careful. But as far as patterns of behavior go, people that work in manual labor and concrete businesses and business owners, these are a particular type of men.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I have seen speculation of a friend, female or male, people have speculated that came over that she knew. And then there was some, whether it was a jealousy thing or an argument over something, that it escalated into that. I've seen the, jilted, wanted to be boyfriend theory thrown out as well. So there've been a couple of those. I'll get into after the I don't want to get too far ahead. I'll get into what the investigations kind of theorized on.
What did they come up with?
Let's see if there's any. So the one I heard, and this was on a like true crime podcast thing or something a while back, that seemed to make sense to me, was that it was a fellow student, and a fellow student that was in the neighborhood, went to, family of another executive, and that since there was so much turnover over all that executive got transferred elsewhere. They covered their paths and they were gone. They were out of the area fairly quickly, was the one theory I've heard. It's interesting. The one which falls along this. So they did actually name some people of interest not that long ago. They were trying to reopen this whole thing. And what I read is their prime suspect died in 2016. And I find this interesting. They have it as, if I understood this right, obviously I didn't get to see like the documents and things. They were saying it was a father of a student that went to school with her, a male student that went to school with her. That was another executive that passed away, that he got in. And so that the idea was that he stopped by the house. She tried to call to see if her dad was still home about whatever he stopped by the house for, and then he did it. So I will say prevailing, it was always, a lot of the thoughts were always it was a fellow student. It was a friend. It was someone along those lines. It was interesting here to see when they actually got this name, not all that long ago, it was just a couple of years ago, that they were naming a father of the student, which that's where I added, they put in there that there was no sexual abuse, there was no, or sexual, rape or anything. And also she was not pregnant. So, cause I guess that was one of the theories then too, was, did the son get the girl pregnant? She said, and so then the dad went to confront her or something, was I guess one of the theories out there. So
that's really interesting. And Steph, there's a lot of really great comments in the chat room. Steph mentioned, was she friendly? And that's a good question to ask about, kind of that personality of the victim. Is this someone that she did well in school? She had a lot of friends, or, because it sounded like she at least had some friends. They were getting ready to go out.
She seemed to be popular by the way they described her, and kind of sung in like a, I guess like the school chorus and things. So not, but the other thing I always got to say too is you would know this more than me. I always think of Heathers, my favorite movie, by the way. After the event, nobody puts out, and this is before social media, so there's not going to be a newspaper article about what a horrible, it was all very positive. So, and again, I don't want to assume that's not true, but you're going to get the best version thrown out there in these. So to your points, that would be hard to say.
Man, times have changed in that way, haven't they?
Yeah.
That's kind of something. Yeah. And then Dolly said, well, was she an attractive woman? This is one of those, Dolly, man, do I walk a thin gray line with victim shaming, working with sex offenders and violent offenders across the country. Not to victim shame, but what did she look like? Was she hideous? Did she have 4 legs and 3 titties, or was she relatively put together? Someone that, if boyfriend's dad, Jim, who had seen her maybe a few times over hanging out with his son and was enamored with her, maybe he came over and said, hey, I'd like to talk with your dad. Oh, he's not here right now. Hey, I know you and Joey broke up. Have you ever, man, there could have been like a rejection there of that older man that was mentioned in that. because it usually is always somebody that you know, somebody very close to you. And if she was relatively attractive, there's a higher likelihood that a sexual connotation was there.
I just
You
looked.
know,
I just looked at
likability, said Dolly. Right. Um, just and also just the ability to reciprocate attention. You know, was she somewhat friendly? Was she really snotty? Was she rude? Was she someone who, um, maybe was grieving as well, very vulnerable? You know, what position was she in? So, man, kind of kind of interesting to say that those things do matter, but they do.
Yeah.
They do. So, Matt, would you say that she was a relatively decent looking girl, or
Yeah, I just quick looked it up. So there's pictures on there. Yeah, I would say. I mean,
who does she remind you of? Give me a celebrity.
I hate to say this. I would say, kind of.
We're not judging. We're just trying to get a visual.
It's funny because she looks like somebody that I went to college with, but that wouldn't help any of you.
Who does she look like in a famous person?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm gonna just see if I. Well, let me share.
Like Sally Field or something?
No, she's got dark hair. Who does she look like? She looks like somebody I. Oh, jeez. I'm just saying
at her.
I can't. Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to say Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster? Okay.
She's got that kind of androgynous look to her. She's not overly feminine. She looks really soft. She's got very soft features.
Kate Jackson. Kate Jackson is a good one, too. Somebody in this chat played Kate Jackson. I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah. She's got a real kind look to her. Man, it doesn't say much when I just looked up 1979 cold case Holly because I couldn't remember the last name that you mentioned. Man, 18 times in her own kitchen. Now here's another thing that we have to kind of take into account, because I'm imagining a house, because thank you Hollywood, but also like the old school homes in the 70s.
While you talk, if I'm zoned out, I'm pulling something up here because I'm going to try to share my screen for some stuff here. So.
Yeah, but I envision the kitchen having a door as well, kind of like Boy Meets World or something, where like every Hollywood show or every sitcom we've ever been raised with, that there's a darn door off of the kitchen, which is not always the case. But I've got a sense that in this house there might be a door off the kitchen. In which case, when she heard that knock, did they come to the front door and she walked them through the house to the kitchen, which is usually never in the front of the house? So if it's only a front door house, she would have had to walk them through the house. Man, if you're a girl home alone in that, freshman year, no. She doesn't, no offense, Holly, she doesn't look terribly overconfident in that regard. So I would want to know about the house, if there was a door off of the kitchen. Oh, look at this, Frank Lloyd.
That's what I mean. We would drive by and see that thought. When I was a kid or in high school, our thought always was that she was up here in her bedroom and the killer was out here and went in through the window. That was the urban legend kind of view of it. But yeah, that's the house.
Okay. Where is the front door in that shot? You pull up and you go up the staircase.
I'm thinking it's down here, maybe.
It looks like there's maybe a garage entrance downstairs, but was that the staircase there to the right? I don't know. That's hard to see.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like a conventional house. That looks like if somebody was knocking on the back kitchen, which there probably is a door that goes out to like a little grill. That looks like the kind of place that would have a little grill and two little patio chairs off the back and like a little smoking area. And I bet you walk through the forest. What's behind that house?
That's a good question. I have to look and see what was behind there before. I mean, this whole area was wooded, but it was a neighborhood. This wasn't like So I'm assuming that there'd be another yard back there. The other thing that's interesting is it's even described that she was on the upstairs phone. There was a doorbell ring and she went downstairs and came back up. So I'm assuming.
Oh, she went downstairs. So they were parked there. And they rang the doorbell. They didn't knock. Doorbell is what
I heard. Yeah, I can. Somebody wants to Google Earth, and
that's just kind of one of those weird things. And it's such a man. Sometimes it's fun to notice these generational changes just now, and through like especially criminal investigations. It used to be doorbells were quite a regular thing. Now it's ring lights. Like now it's different. So the process of, hello, I'm here is different. It used to be in ringing the doorbell that was like very professional and very people that were dropping things off, versus a knock was still friends or family that stopped by. Usually friends or family, they'll always knock to let you know they're coming in, but they're not going to ring the doorbell. Usually it's like parents dropping someone off or something a little bit more formal. Ring lights have kind of changed that. But luckily, at this point in time, 1979. Yeah, there she is. She looks like a little Jodie Foster. La da dee. Look at those cute little eyelashes and her little wafted hair there. Yeah, she's got a cute little face. She looks like she's got some auburn brown hair, and it's got the 80s feathered bangs and parted over, the side, and her little peach chapstick. This is in Pennsylvania, so the east part of the country. And the house that we were just showing there, it's a very well-to-do. I mean, I don't know how the home value is over there, but like a house like that in Minnesota or Missouri would probably be a $380,000 house by the looks of it, give or take. At least. So Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, this is the cold case urban legend stories where Matt's from. And I don't know anything about this. So I joined tonight's show as a guest thinking, man, I was going to give commentary on something I knew nothing about, which is always fun. And I don't know anything about this cold case. But the breaking off of the knife, that is significant. Have you ever broken a knife?
No. I gotta think you gotta be really. That's what I was thinking too. It's gotta be some pretty.
It's gotta be a real shitty knife. I mean, you'd either had to have not planned it.
Crappy knife, or strong person, or somebody going absolutely just wild, like adrenaline wise.
Well, and I'm gonna be stereotypical again. Usually, you've got a single parent man. And after your wife dies, you get a lot of gift cards, especially in 1979. You're going to get a lot of casserole dishes and things given to you. But then you're going to have a lot of housewares sent and dropped off. You're going to have Tupperwares, casserole dishes, maybe even a knife set. But also a CEO of a concrete business. This is a skilled laborer. This is a man who's going to have sharp knives. And if he notices a knife with a bad handle, with his daughter and kids just having left the home, I imagine he probably fixes things in the house. That house looked like it was well taken care of. So I'm going to make some assumptions there. That if that knife was broken off in a person's body and you left it there, that's kind of an interesting thing. Usually if people leave the weapon there, they're done. Mm-hmm. I'm done with it. I don't even want the weapon I killed you with. I'm so done. I'm leaving it in your body while you die. Where'd the handle? Was it broken off on the floor?
I was thinking that while you were saying. I got to go back and look. I don't remember reading any references to the handle. So was the handle gone?
Right. And if you brought the weapon to stab the person, because I'm assuming there's probably a knife set. So either it was laying there and the person grabbed it, not knowing it was a crappy knife, or the person like broke it off on purpose. And the handle, because if you were really smart. And it was probably a wood grain handle, like most Damascus knives in a kitchen set are, you're going to get blood in that handle. And if there were defensive marks and you grabbed the knife from her in the beginning, like one good yank on the knife, you probably did cut yourself.
Somebody's asking where the knife, it was a knife from home, because there was some speculation that she actually may have been the one to draw it first, depending on what was going on there.
Yeah.
And then we
need to know where the knife was from. Look at us all playing Clue. Where was the knife from? Was it a pocket knife? It seems like, and again, and this is a weird question to ask. I ask this all the time in my profession, but have you ever stabbed someone?
No.
I think about, like, in a lot of the police trainings, we got to do if you're watching Forged in Fire, like the body things that actually have blood in them, because Rasmussen at that time was also in nursing school. So we had the mannequins you could cut open like that, but also jujitsu and things. Stabbing a person, I mean, it goes in like butter, but like 18 times. I mean, I don't even do arm lifts at the gym in 18 reps. You do like 10 or 15 because you're tired. That's an adrenaline. That's an interesting amount. And we need to know where the knife was at. Was it from there? I'm going to Katie says, I would love for you both to do a Sunday show on the Francis Bloomfield murders in Iowa. I'm very connected to that situation. Ooh, maybe we should. We could always do like a forensic pop-up. We're going to be doing our Zodiac top 10s coming up this month. And cold files and cold cases are always fun. I'm reading the chat now.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So I wonder, where was the handle of the knife? That's what I would want to know. That would be if I was coming in as Sherlock Holmes, I'd want to know where. Tell me more about the knife. Because that, again, I mean, I've butchered a spaghetti squash or two, some watermelon, some pumpkin carving situations where I was bending the knife in my body. And it takes a lot to break a knife off in a person's body too.
Yep. I'm just looking to see if I could find any more things on here.
Steph said, man, I would think if this was a man executive in concrete, he also is someone working in the field that probably has very strong construction physical abilities, which is, again, it's another assumption that I would have made, Steph, too, is that even though you're a CEO, so you've got, that, and I think narcissism can be a great thing, and it can be a good thing if it helps you achieve success. CEO, being the top of your business. But I imagine when your wife dies of cancer, something you can't control, it's pretty frustrating. Something you can't fix, it's really frustrating. Even when you got all the money and you've done all the things and you're at the top of your game, and then this happens, that's probably pretty frustrating.
Let me add here too, because I think that we have a number of people here that are active that came in later. To add, the other weird part about this is the brother, shortly after, started saying he was going to try to flush out the person by very publicly going around and saying he knew who the killer was. He knew who the killer was. He knew who the killer was, which his dad supposedly told him, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. He happens to die in a freak accident just months later where the garage gas station where he worked at blew up. Him and one other person were cleaning supposedly there was flammable liquid and a spark ignited it, but it is also very interesting that there were only 2 people in the building. One escaped. He died. So,
man, when you think about motives and how that kind of complicates the story, as a parent, or just as a human being with like reason, if you have someone saying, you know what, the tactic I'm going to take is I'm going to say I know who did it. Either that's a lie, and you're lying, and someone is going to want to call your bluff, and so the only real risk you have is someone calling your bluff. Or you're a dad telling your child not to do that because you know who the person is too. And if that person gets word that they're doing that, they're going to get pissed and they're going to come for him. Or put the dad in a tight spot. Like, as a parent, you got your only last grieving loved one and they're going, I'm going to do this. Like, people are going to cope how they're going to cope. Why would you tell them, don't do that? Don't do that. That's kind of weird.
mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, I was even thinking if you go with the whole fellow executive concept or theory, so was this another wealthy, powerful person well, that's not what I wanted. Powerful, connected family, don't screw with us. We have connections to make you go away. I'll even go as far as we're not that far from New York. There are mob tendrils that go into these different areas. Was there some kind of connection that way? It is a building, building materials. There, ties in with construction. So it is just very interesting that there's this little like cross thing. And now it could just be a freak accident and just freak timing, but it is weird that he said he was, going to publicly go around and say he knew who did it, and then dies in this weird explosion. I got to say, as far as I know, it's the only gas station that I know of that has exploded back home. I'll have to look that up, but I mean, that's not like a common thing. You don't have blowing up, you don't have exploding gas stations back home.
That's weird.
Yeah. So it just adds a weird wrinkle to this, which again would be, I don't know if so it was interesting to find out when they opened this up, at least what they revealed was that, their main person of interest was this other executive whose son went to school with her. The original speculation I saw on some of these podcasts was that it was a fellow student and that, was it, connected family one way or the other, whether it was just, powerful through being an executive or powerful through some shady stuff. And that kicked in to cover it up and cover for him, and which included possibly taking care of the son.
Man, this is kind of wild. And I guess what's very frustrating about it is whenever I'm in these situations looking at a cold case like this, I can see already that these are the things I would want more specific answers to. Is there a door connecting the kitchen to the back? How does that door look? As far as, is that the door that you would approach or not? Is that the front door that person, the downstairs that they came to?
See, I heard another story. I'm going to add to this real quick, but it's not in the official stuff I'm seeing. So I don't know whether this was urban legend or not, that the kids went to pick her up at 6, went around to the back, or actually it wasn't at 6. It was the next morning, went around to the back and saw her feet, like her shoes, like, the bottom part of her laying down. And they called. Now, when I looked up the second time, they're all saying it was the son that found her when she wouldn't answer the phone. He went back to the house, but that would imply to your point that there was door access.
Usually a door on a kitchen.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut in there. I just wanted to elaborate on that.
Well, it's one of those, like, then it makes you think then that person came around. That person came around to the door in the kitchen. Because she went down to answer it and go back upstairs and say, you know what, I'm going to need to call you back. And either she took them upstairs to the kitchen or they killed her and then walked outside to where there's little evidence to be tracked through the house because they're smart. Or they left. Oh, okay. Well, now that I see that you're not home and your dad's not here. Okay, cool. And they walked right upstairs. She got back on the phone to call her friends back. And that person came in the door that they knew would be there. Huh. But there was no forced entry. Kind of looks like a nice enough neighborhood. She probably doesn't leave the back door locked or anything.
No sign of forced entry. It looks at that. I guess that leads into some of the details. I feel like maybe they are not specific as to why they feel the person stayed there. I'm guessing it was possibly cleaned up other than the puddle that she was in. But they said that they believe that whoever did it remained in the house for a while afterwards.
That would make me think it is not the dad or the brother. Only because if you're so mentally ill that you're able to detach from a crime like that, like if you would have that kind of mental illness present already, that people around you would suspect you pretty heavily. Otherwise, if you're, a normal person, For the most part, everyone thinks you're pretty normal, pretty relatively normal. I think it would be very difficult for you to stab your daughter in the back that many times and then leave her on your kitchen and hang around.
Yeah.
Without crying or pacing or going back up and touching the body. I think it would be very, very difficult.
Yep.
That's also a weird behavior to stay at the crime scene.
I'll have to dig in that more to find out why. I don't know exactly why, but unless it was just that there was things were cleaner than they would have expected outside of her body. So, but I have read that was in several things that I read that they said that they believe that the person remained there, which was one of the theories, and that they lived in they lived in the neighborhood, waited till it got dark, and then went back home, because there's no reports of any odd cars, no reports of any. So that was the other thing, is they feel that it was somebody that walked to the location, did it, and then possibly, after it was dark.
But her friends were going to come over and go to the movies. Like, if you were staying there.
But did they know that? I don't know.
Right. Man, that's a really cool case. Okay. And then you had another case that you wanted.
Yeah, I wanted to get this
tonight,
this one's not there's not as much information on it. So, and I actually heard about this the first time when I was in high school. I had a coworker that I had to work on Halloween, and I had a coworker that told me, like, "Oh, we're all going to Becky's grave." And I'm like, "Well, what's the deal with Becky's grave?" So it turns out her name was Rebecca Brown. This one is tragic as well. She was found right after Christmas. I think it was December 27th. I want to say it was 1983. Was found in a creek or a canal. We have like the Lehigh Rivers, the main river cutting through. So she was in water. I know I did read in the description, there's not as much on her out there. I've had a harder time finding things on this. That's why this one I'm going to say ahead of time. It's going to be a little more confusing. So this will be urban legend mixing with what possibly happened. I know they said that at the time, I read the original news article, the clothes were frozen to her. So they couldn't really, there was abrasions and things. So they couldn't really, it turned out she was only like 13. They charged 3 men, 19, 20, and 14. She was raped. She was assaulted. They got, from what I can see, convicted of involuntary manslaughter. But I have a hard time finding a lot of details on this one. And again, it might have to be with the time, they maybe didn't publish as much stuff on this, but the idea was, or at least the urban legend part of this was, that her father was a Hell's Angels or some gang, and that they would come out to this grave at night, particularly on Friday nights, and have a vigil out at the grave, with the idea that they felt that the killer was going to come back to the scene of the crime, and that they were going to catch him and kill him. There's other legends that they actually would hide in the woods around this cemetery and wait to see if anyone stopped by the grave, and again get them and kill them, thinking that they were the person. So that was the urban legend. You would go out to Becky's grave, and the vengeful dad and gang will come and kill you. I will say I did go out there once. There's all kinds of, people, probably even still now, people, because it's just how tragic the thing was. There's somebody would supposedly always leave like black roses there, but there's usually flowers, notes, candles.
Steph said something really important in the chat there, though, about Hell's Angels. They usually don't go after children in any way, shape, or form, and kind of the opposite. Even though
no. I want to be clear. The dad was, and supposedly they were going to get the person who did it.
Right.
So they didn't do it to her. They at least charged these two young adults, 19 and 20, and I guess a peer. He was 14.
Well, and I'm guessing, I wonder if when I look at that, I think, well, involuntary manslaughter. Okay, so there was no premeditation there. There was no plan. And they're probably charged the 2 younger ones. The one is a juvenile. The other one probably a juvenile as well. And then the third, depending on who they decide is the, accomplice to the main crime. Like, these people probably aren't even going to serve any time or do anything like that, which is pretty scary.
What doesn't add up to me is, but this is where it could be the urban legend piece, is the trial and everything happened in like 84, 85. And they're coming out there and having this vigil and still wanting to catch the person who did it was like, this would have been late 80s when that was going on. And supposedly, again, unless it's made up, I never went out at night to see if they were out there doing the vigils. People claim they went out and did see the group kind of hanging out there, and said that they would have like these, like on Friday nights, they would come out and set out candles and stuff and just have like this vigil at her grave, which I mean isn't all that out of the. There's two different things.
No,
they could be going out to visit the grave and without the intent of, hey, I'm going to find somebody and murder them. So
So
again,
were
what's
the
real
three
and what's not.
people charged with her assault and murder, was that publicized, or because they were minors, maybe no one knew who it was and they just went back into the community before?
It's not letting me pull it up because I wasn't.
Because that sounds like what it might.
Guilty. They got involuntary manslaughter. They didn't get. And I'm going to try to see what a Catasauqua girl was struggling with all her might while two youths fondled her near a railroad trestle in the area where she was later found dead.
It doesn't give any names of the suspects or people.
It gives their names. Yep.
Oh, it does.
Yep. And her body was found. I'm sorry, it was Christmas Eve on 1983.
Oh,
near the canal in water.
That's Christmas Eve. What a sad. I think of the police officers that night.
He said they were sitting on rocks, passing around a bottle of whiskey that the girl bought.
What? She was 13.
I know. The one guy was trying to. This is what's in the article. Trying to unzip her jacket. Brown was squirming and trying to get away. Yeah, and then I guess they were basically. They're in a very nice coded way, basically giving the description that obviously the guys were trying to rape her.
Yeah.
She said she couldn't breathe and that she would tell her dad and they would all be in trouble.
Mm-hmm. And I bet that scared him like hell too, because her dad probably was a motorcycle guy.
Yeah.
And so then you've got one of the older guys going, shut her up.
One stayed behind and they all met for pizza. So I guess it's the one guy that was. So
one stayed behind.
Brown, but where they found her body isn't where. But again, one stayed behind. Where they found her body isn't where this event happened.
Oh.
They found her at the bottom of an embankment moaning.
So they just tossed her over the creek bed?
Hysterical, intoxicated, and crying.
That's sad. Happens every day. People, watch your children.
Oh, I guess they're examining. I'm scanning this quickly because this was the one that popped up. But I think they're saying. So it's kind of unclear. I think they're coming back and saying that they found. I guess the one guy saying he found her in that condition and tried to help her out. So yeah, it's murky. So
yeah, they probably. It's sad. I try not to work with children because of that. And Katie had kind of shared in the chat, like, it's hard to understand or empathize with sometimes how people are capable of such violent, heinous, really crazy things. But, in truth, it is a spectrum of the human emotion and the human process. And death is very much a natural part of that. So whether it's killing your own food or, having this interaction with nature, killing is something that you have to kind of be able to compartmentalize because you see the value in other people around you. If you're killing because of, no reason at all, and you've just lost your cool and you're out of control, that's unfortunate. But that's really a rare thing. Usually there's a very real situation and reason and motivation and plan and plot. And it's usually the people we love, which is, I think, I don't know, maybe not the biggest surprise to people, but, if you're looking at sex offense or violent crime, it's, domestic, usually, almost always. So,
yeah, I'm trying to find it real quick.
When you've got young boys, man, if you've got young boys 3 or more, that pack mentality, well, that's a real thing. Testosterone and adrenaline and peer pressure and alcohol, you're mixing a lot of risk factors into that situation. And when one of the young boys is saying she's wriggling to get free, that means she was being held down. So that's kind of a power, force, control. That's something that you see a lot of children and people that just don't know how to regulate their emotions well. They haven't been taught well, haven't been modeled good behavior, and have a lot of frustration built up. Oh, it's pretty.
It appears the dad died in 2014. So, and then there's just people leaving notes and stuff on it.
Leaving all their stuff. It's interesting that of all the graves in a cemetery that, 1 or 2 have a story about them. Yeah. That 1 or 2 are, highlighted as one to go back to and do a sigil, a vigil, or a seance, or something like that at. But it's sad that they found the body in a different place. That's kind of unique to that case, because usually kids aren't going to move the body.
Right.
And usually, that's a lot of work and effort, and somebody would see you, and kids usually bury it.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering if there's enough doubt. This one's harder, and probably because of the ages and things, and this one's harder to find stuff on.
Well, and if you throw a body into a creek bed, it's going to move. If there's any water in the creek bed, or as the earth shifts around it, the animals as well go into the water source are going to move it probably a little bit. Which I mean, I hate to think about that, but again, my heart goes out to the police officers, the detectives, the people that work that stuff, that are getting that call on Christmas Eve that a little 13-year-old girl has been found, because water is going to wash away a lot of that, and she probably was found by animals. And so very difficult to identify. And then you've got the dad who's got to go down there and do that, and that's no good either. People in the chat room are like, it's very cathartic, it's very emotional. I always feel like a big fat bitch because I do this so often that I'm not emotional about it at all, because it's compartmentalizing and boundaries and just trying to be preventative. The more you understand about it, hopefully the more you can deter and prevent. That's kind of my goal in it. But crime's happening all the time. But also we have Jupiter. We talked about this on our astrology show. There's all kinds of astrology movements happening today that are going to create a little passion. Gotta say it like that. Which is, I feel bad. Yeah, probably what happened in this little girl situation. Yeah.
Which these were just 2 that, were creepy, had creepy stories associated with them when I was like in high school. And so I just want to get into the real tales behind them.
Yeah. And I always try and remove because that judgment is that real difficult space where it's like, you have a 13-year-old girl who's hanging out with a 14-year-old and a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old. And there's alcohol involved, which, I mean, usually if my child's coming home, I'm going to smell alcohol on them, I would think. So, like, there's just some things going on in that's, unfortunately, there's doesn't sound like very good parenting situation going on there.
Yeah.
Not that, that completely prevents all things, guys, but
no.
It does seem to make a big difference if you're aware of what's going on. Okay.
Well, that was it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I got to say, I shouldn't say enjoyed it, but I mean, we're entertained by it. Obviously it was, we don't want to be entertained off tragedy, but you know what I mean? And it is always better. That's why I want to try to do this more often when I do these topic things as opposed to experiments, to have somebody on with me. Because if I wanted to just relay this story, it would have been done in 10 minutes. So having your perspective was very good and very interesting on this. And Yeah, I've had the first one was, that one has always intrigued me, and it is out there. It's on some podcasts and stuff. It's just not very well known, but it is an interesting cold case kind of out there.
Well, and it's so much fun to see the people in the chat room sharing the cold cases where they're from, like the stories where they lived. Growing up in Kansas City, we had a lot of them, but in my undergraduate, before I left Kansas City to go to Minneapolis and travel around, there were things going through like the system that were cases known to Kansas City and Missouri situations, like BTK type stuff,
Yeah.
or things like that, where I'm always like, ooh, I wonder what the crime of the area or the town is. So the fact that you have one in Bethlehem is kind of exciting. My husband's not awake right now, otherwise I'd holler out into the ether, because here in the little town where I live at, there is one. And it's that a little boy was plucked. It's like a town of 5,000 people, and he was driving or riding his bike. He was like 8 years old and riding his bike and plucked out and just gone, just missing.
Oh, wow.
We
had a similar one here. It was again same town, but there's no like urban legend with it and stuff. A poor little girl, she might have been like 9, went to her parents gave her money to go to the corner store, and she again was found in the river.
I hate that when people throw, but that's a smart thing to do. Is if you've got a body on your hand, I guess, is to throw it in the river, because all the evidence gets washed away for the most part. So bad to say that, but if somebody's like, we pulled it out of the river, it's like, I mean, it's really gross, but unless it's inside of them, probably not going to get a lot of evidence. So, right? Anyway, which, by the way, Kansas City just threw out all their cold cases and rape cases and all of that. All of them. There were like 50 years worth of them or something ridiculous, and they just got rid of them all.
Oh, wow.
Threw them out. Yeah, they were like, sorry, we don't have the manpower, and we've got to focus elsewhere, so we're moving on. And it was like, what? A lot of people were kind of sad. We were hoping maybe they'd throw them to the psychics or something. But anyway, well, Matt, it was such an honor to be on the show. I love the show. And if you need me, you just give me a holler. And then I might have you pop on a show with me throughout the week, because I'm going to be doing some psychological stuff. Then we've got our astrology show on Tuesday that hopefully people don't miss. Come on, guys.
We're still doing. I got so my top 10 songs for the signs. I got 10 out of 12. There's actually 2 signs that I'm actually at this great defiance. I can't even get 10 songs for.
Well, and
which actually surprised me.
Done yet. So I'm like frantic trying to get them done, because I'm a perfectionist. So it'll take me a second, but I will do it. But all right, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to hop off here and go get the kids to bed. But thank you so much for having me. And until next time.
Thank you very much. We'll see you on Tuesday.
Bye-bye, guys.
All right. See ya. And I'm going to wrap up here too. So have a good night, everyone. I hope you guys have a great week, and we will be back. Check us out on Tuesday, but we will see you on next Sunday as well. Good night.